Hi, everyone. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series Snowstorm Edition on the East Coast. And today, our very special guest is Jen Knox. And let me tell you a little bit about Jen Knox. Actually, she put a bird in it, which is awesome. This is her webpage. The thing is, I'm doing a nice virtual event. If you want to know more about Jen Knox, go to jennknox.com. But a little highlights, and we'll talk about some of this stuff later, which seems to be really interesting. She was a high school dropout, and she ended up getting a BA in English at Otterbein University, cum laude, graduated. His MFA from Bennington. She has many books. She has a novel coming out in 2022, and she's released a flash fiction book in 2021, Dandelion Ghosts. And she also has written some various books on craft. She's a writer instructor, and she coaches writing one-on-one, and she is also a teacher. So without anything else from me, I would like to turn it over to Jen for her reading. Take her away.
All right. Thank you, Timothy. Appreciate it. I appreciate the invite, and it's good to be here. And I'm in the Midwest, so I'm kind of out of the snow range here. So I'm going to just show off about that a little bit. I'm going to read from Dandelion Ghosts, a few very short pieces. The first one is Popliteal Fosa. Money was born at the backs of her knees. As a young girl, she stumbled, and the coins piled up beneath her heels. It was a neat trick that caused her parents to sing the girl's praises before making their demands and ultimately trying to rip from her what they couldn't see. When the coins were all used up, they disappeared. As an older child, she traversed her coastal city with a slanty-headed green toy made of clay that could bend to accommodate any circumstance. This toy, a gift from her late grandmother, taught her to worship asymmetrical things. She saw the world as a splendor of odd shapes, and as she got older, learned to avoid mirrors and people with pretty faces. As a young adult, she walked the beaches alone and wanted nothing. She found a stretch of sand to settle on, but those who shared the land were fierce. They'd steal anything they could from her body and her bags, but they didn't know what to do with what they stole. Now, with nothing, she slept on the warm sand, sober, while those nearby brought things to smoke or imbibe or dissolve on their tongues. As those substances dissolved them, in turn, she learned to offer compassion from afar. Knowing about the soft spot at the backs of her knees, she waited until the sun fell and journeyed onward. On an indigo night, she walked toward a beach that had a sign saying no textiles, a term that nudists used to describe the clothed. It seemed a fitting place to camp. The first few nights, she saw too much flesh too fast. After a while, however, she found delight in their awkwardness. The scattershot parts that made up the machines. They were all machines, barely working, but honest about it. A seeker, she continued to move until she found an expanse that called to her. Flowers blossomed from the hands of one beach dweller, while another worshipped the water-heavy sand as it fell in clumps from his fingers. Home. Wading into the water, she knocked her knees together for the first time in years, filling the hidden corners of the ocean with coins. At one time, she thought she was broken, shattered like a piggy bank. Her parents and others had cut themselves on her edges. But knowing how to lose it all only to discover there's nothing to lose, she learned to trade starfish for seashells and only fleetingly wondered where the coins would surface. At the mouth of the ocean each night, she created more than the entire world could spend, and as others explored their freedoms and greed, she wished them all well. And then one more short piece. This is, thanks for the snaps. This is the namesake, Dandelion Ghosts. We were born into curiosity and raised with a light touch. We ran around trees and chased ice cream trucks down the street, or stared at the world through cameras and recorded what we saw in bound journals. The crumbling concrete alongside the homes led to narrow alleyways that promised adulthood. We congregated on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and marched past the plump blackberry vines and fields of dandelion ghosts. Stopping to taste the fruit or flick the heads of flowers into the alley, we enjoyed the last bit of childhood beneath the blue sky, dirty fingers and playful shoves. Once beyond the fields, the awkwardness and delights of youth would be over, and the mysteries that awaited would be revealed. We would wait to solve the riddle that stumped so many before us. No one sat on back porches to monitor our pace or offer words of wisdom. The elders were too tired. The homes we left were perpetual rehab projects, tall and brick. There was nothing alluring to make us turn around. There were no home-cooked meals or promises of stories at night. The basement held ghosts and dust, the mistakes of those who came before us. Just before we reached adulthood, the vines became thicker. Blackberries covered the path, either smashed or whole. Small animals watched and waited, so there was stillness as, one by one, we reached the end of the alley where the riddle was presented to us at last. There must be rules to freedom and ambiguity around structure. A simple sign directed us. Move forward to trade, go uphill to give, run downhill to take. We scattered, some going on instinct, while others turned back after a headlong dash. Beyond the signs were homes like those we grew up in, only made with solar panels. Wind turbines overlooked our town, and the air was clean. We found the homes we liked the best and began to fill our roles, providing, taking, and exchanging what we found at hand. We ate berries and harvested dandelions for tea and medicine. Some ate rabbit and raccoon, while others chewed on bark and plucked tiny insects to bake into brownies. The first decade of adulthood, the majority decided to provide. We grew strong and steady like the rivers where we caught fish and swam every solstice. Our celebrations were boisterous and our rest was deep. But some of us grew bored and began to take unapologetically. The trend continued until there was more need for exchange. We changed roles again after a few years or a few realizations. Takers found guilt and opulence alike. Providers smiled wearily while worrying over time and lack of resources. Those responsible for exchanging goods were always counting, and this drove them to madness. The second decade, takers demanded more homes and stockpiled the fish. Those who traded were told what to say, and we began to look at each other with wariness. The few providers starved. Some died and were buried in basements where our children would play with their ghosts. The path toward death was a circle. We walked it until we grew too tired, and then we watched as our children moved away. They skipped toward a lake where they would create a new life. They took a path worn into the fields that were full of soy and marigold. And they ended up who knows where, with all new signs. We watched as our parents had, talking to our ghosts, asking them what comes next, and they told us to wait. The children approached their riddle. One sign told them to look inward, one sign outward, and a third to look directly up. We watched as their heads moved. Some closed their eyes while others examined the earth, and those who remained pointed upwards toward the stars. We watched them for decades. Though some never moved, others refused to sit still, and those looking up imposed stories they couldn't prove. We swelled with pride. Their riddle was tougher than ours, and we applauded their hardscrabble journey. As our children walked in circles, their children shook their head and made their way toward another life. New ghosts remained, and we began to band together to move beyond brick and basement, stone and soy, to create new riddles for all the children as they rushed and argued, created and destroyed, and ultimately found out how little they all knew.
Wow, that was brilliant, Jen. What great prose in those stories. And we already have a question for you. And Sean want to know what it was titled, the first piece.
Popliteal Fosa. And so
What is that exactly?
it's the backs of the knees. So that spot behind the knee. So, we always talk about the knee when we talk about the front, but we got two sides. Yes.
So also I noticed on your webpage as we were flipping through that as a writing coach, you are teaching over in Italy.
I am, yes. Actually, Charles, who's on this call, will be there as well. We're gonna get a small group of writers together, and we're going to tour Italy and write and eat good food, and it's going to be amazing in September.
What part of Italy? All over?
All over in the heart of the Renaissance.
It's in the Lamarck. It's in the Lamarck region of Italy. Sorry for breaking in.
Yep, Mark.
That's great. So as a writing coach, do you coach writers of all ages or?
I do, but mostly I do work with people who have been writing for a little while. So generally adults and generally fiction writers or creative nonfiction writers.
And what's the most frequent writing tool that you have to coach them with? I mean, it could just be something that you focus on, not necessarily what is lacking in them.
Yeah, I think it depends. So some people are very prolific, but they just need structure. They need some kind of container for their writing. So they need to kind of look at how to focus, essentially. So I'd say one of the things that I do a lot with writers is just kind of talk through what it is they're trying to really get to. So the why behind the why, and then we try to focus in that way. And then, yeah, there are also writers who are just like, I don't have time, but here I am on a coaching call with you. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's write on this call. Let's make this a working meeting. So it just depends. Everybody has their own obstacles and they're in their own places with their writing, but sometimes just talking it out helps a lot.
Now, when you're trying to have a writer gain focus, does that mean that you ever get resistance toward that? Like, do writers tend to want to not let go of certain things?
No, I've not found that. I found more that I think people do like to talk about their own process and their own writing, and there's just not a lot of opportunity to do so. Especially when you're in the midst of a project. Once a project's done, then you do the things and you read and you share your work. But when it's mid-process, people aren't usually tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, tell me how it's going, and so I think that for the most part, people kind of almost feel like it's a little bit of a relief and a release to have somebody to just bounce ideas off of, vocalize what they're, thinking, and try to make that little swirly line into something a little bit straighter and smoother.
Now, is it harder to be a one-on-one writing coach versus like to facilitate, say, a critique group for higher educated writers?
Yeah, I like the one-on-one. I think it is harder. It's more emotional. People go a little deeper. It can, a lot of times we write for very emotional reasons. And so sometimes that can open things up. And so you have to hold space for that, and you have to, be gentle around those things and focus, on the writing and what I can actually give good advice on. And so I say that part's a little bit harder, but I do think there's a certain adrenaline you get when you're teaching a class that's kind of, challenging and fun in its own way. So I don't know, they're just different flavors.
Also, I saw in your bio you were a high school dropout, and then you got some degrees post high school. So my question is, when did you begin writing? Were you writing before college level?
No, not at all. I've not. I mean, I did plagiarized a few like, Tom and Jerry cartoons when I was a kid, and and I think, I don't know, maybe Powerpuff Girls, I don't know, a few of those things, but I would literally just rewrite what I saw, and it probably made no sense at all. But no, I wasn't really much of a writer at all. And then yeah, I just wanted to work. I just wanted to work. I wanted autonomy. I wanted to go explore the world. So I think in a way I was writing, but I was writing by, just going out and doing the things that I was curious about, for better or worse. There were other reasons, that I made that decision, but yeah, but writing is what pulled me back, and writing is what pulled me back to, my education, and writing is what pulled me back to really any kind of purpose. So
Now, do you have certain stories or certain things in your head that you were dying to put on paper? Is that why you went back to school, or?
Yeah, well, I went back to school from really initially from more curiosity. I was just, that this is, I'm pretty sure if I go to school, I can maybe get, a couple $1,000s in my bank account. That would be great. So yeah, give me the loans. I won't pay attention to that. So I just kind of went initially as like another job. But once I was there, it was actually a psychology professor who he loved to assign essays. It was abnormal psych and social psych. And so we would go out and we would do odd things like stand the wrong way in an elevator or something to that effect, and then write an essay about it. And I loved it. It felt like journalism. It felt like the best kind of journalism. It was a human study, and both self-study and studying the world. And I kept writing essays, and had a little bit of catching up to do in terms of grammar and syntax and things like that. But, got there, and then decided, okay, I like writing so much, I might as well major in English. So.
And what was do you remember the first short story that you wrote?
Yeah, it was about frogs, like killer frogs. I don't believe that it exists anymore.
Wow, it sounds really riveting.
I think so. I think it was.
All right, so you've written books of longer short stories, and then you went to a flash book, and next year you're releasing a novel. Were you doing all of this simultaneously, or was there a certain progression that you had to change your headspace around?
Yeah, I think that it's a lot easier for me to write short stories. I love short stories. I like to date my characters, not marry them. But this novel that's coming out is a huge victory for me. I'm not gonna lie, I've been working on it for quite a long time, and it just all clicked. It's so funny how sometimes you're about to give up on something and it just all clicks. So this novel is the first novel I've been working on. I've been chipping away at it while I've been doing other things. But yeah, the little chap that I just read from, I just wrote all those in 2020. Like that was like my therapy. Like I was just having fun. And I'd say that before that, I was really just trying to write X number of stories. Like I was just kind of looking at it as a challenge. Like how much can I get done? Now I just write whenever I can. I'm actually working on a collection of essays now about all my shitty minimum wage jobs that I had in the 90s and the early 00s. So that'll be fun.
What was the shittiest?
Oh, that's really hard. I mean, for me personally, either data entry or actually serving, because I was just really bad at it. It's not that it was the worst job, but I could not remember. And we would get hockey players that would come into this particular restaurant, and they all would order beer. And you had to put it like in a certain order, and it would all look the same to me. And I twist it was just bad. It was bad.
Now, was it a chain restaurant?
Yes.
Chain restaurant. Because I waited tables at a Denny's, so I'd like to.
Okay.
Where did you work?
Well, we had a corporate mandated Aussie accent. No, it was Outback Steakhouse.
Nice. Did you ever spill food on anybody?
I think drinks, but not food. Yeah. And I once got a very, very generous pity tip, which I'm very proud of. It was like an $80 tip from this older couple who just really felt really bad for me because I was so bad at my job. So that, got that.
You've
On
also
my
written a
CV.
craft book, Mindful Fiction, and it's the subtitle is Write a Short Story in 10 Days. How strict is that timeline? Like if someone finishes in 8 days, is it not no good, or 14 days, or?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make it compartmental so that you could sit down 10 sittings and do it systematically if that's the way that your brain works and you like to create that way. There is a method behind the madness of writing short fiction if you want it to be there. And
What
so
should, what should someone do in day one?
So day one is idea generation. So this is kind of looking at your environment in different ways, and yeah. So and then it kind of gets more into building, and you can swap the days. You can focus on a character first. You could focus on the setting and or the plot line first. So it's just kind of tackling different aspects of the story, figuring things out, and then drafting at a certain point.
All right, so two people in the chat have both written how inspiring you are. So do you feel like you inspire others to write in different genres? Like, do you have any feelings toward that? Do you have any feelings toward that lousy question I couldn't quite form? But make up an answer based on what you think the question meant.
I think that I actually think that in terms of genre flexibility, I do think that I actually went to Bennington for creative non, and creative nonfiction was in my opinion more aligned with poetry than fiction. So when I started writing fiction, I was just like, wow, this is so great. I have no rules. I don't have to worry about anything being accurate. I don't have to worry about, it was just wonderful. And I get to impose a plot. This is so easy. This is so great. And then, I did it for a while and I was like, okay, I guess this is hard too. But yeah, to do well anyway. But yeah, so I think I can maybe work with people to see the beauty in different genres. I myself am not often a poet, and so that's probably least of my expertise, but I have a great appreciation for our poets, Cindy, out there.
So say you are only allowing yourself, or you're only going to write one more book in your life and it's going to be great. What genre?
That's tough. I think I would have to go to nonfiction.
All right. Your book that you read from, All Flash Fiction, how long did it take, like the span of writing that, like your first piece of flash fiction to the last one made in the book? How many years are we talking for that span?
Oh, well, this is a very short book, but it was a year, but it was also 2020. So it was like when we were still very high off of the, having all of this time and not knowing what to do with it. I feel like most people are really good at wasting time now in a new fantastic way. But in 2020, we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We all have like this crazy amount of angst and energy and terror. And I think there's nothing better for writing than being terrified and angsty. And so I just funneled all that into this little chapbook. So I wrote this mostly with a little writing group that we met in the evenings, and I would just draft these stories. Only one of them is a little bit older, and that's Lottery Days. So I recycled that one.
Did some of the fear from 2020 seep its way into the plot of any of these stories?
Yeah, I think Dandelion Ghosts was actually, so that was kind of my generational piece, my commentary on generations. And, there was a lot of, talk about, just the generational divides and things like that. And I think that everybody was contemplating, the frailty of our existence to some extent that year. And so those two things together did kind of feed that story. And that story really flowed out. That just flowed out. And that ended up winning the Flash Fiction Magazine Award too, which was really great. So but then the other ones, I don't know, they were a mix of things. Like the other one that I read from just now, Popliteal Fosa, that was I had heard the term textiles. I didn't know that nudists referred to clothed people as textiles, almost as a derogatory term. And so I just wrote the whole story around like that, and then that, a vague idea of a character. So you never know where it's going to start,
John has a question. Who are your favorite short story writers?
So I kind of grew up on like Cheever and ZZ Packer and Carver. I really like Edgar Carrot. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, I might be messing it up, but I really love his flash fiction. His flash fiction is fantastic. Yeah. And Flannery O'Connor, to be honest with you, I hate to say it, but I've never really resonated with Flannery O'Connor very much. I don't know. Sorry, everyone. Every literary person disowning me.
So you had a piece that appeared in the Best American Small Fictions, and it might have been the first year of it in 2017. Tell me about that process, how it was submitted, how you felt when you actually got in.
Oh yeah, that was really fantastic. That was also a very short piece, and if I remember right, I think that piece was also republished a few times. Like sometimes that happens where one little piece that you didn't expect necessarily to get published is then republished quite a few times or adapted. And I think that one was even sold to a textbook in Texas for like a standardized test question, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, so I think it was really nice. And that was one of those breakthrough moments for me too. You have those little wins, you have a lot of slog and then those little wins as a writer, and those are always really lovely.
Well, thanks so much for coming in and being a guest and reading. But before we leave, I think that you might sell $80 worth of books if you do your Australian accent. There was a request for that.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Bloomin' a bloomin' onion instead of. I got a thumbs down. Oh, see, this is how you make an exit, everyone.
The bloomin' onion.
Yes.
So we'll make the exit right here. So make sure you visit Jen Knox's website, jennknox.com, and you'll see all of her books. Yep, there they all are. All of her books and the books that she is in or wrote or edited or just involved in. So check it out. And thank you so much for, oh, wait a minute. Did that share or not? It did not. Yeah, wow, that was I was sort of like playing air guitar with a website. So here are the books.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wow, someone needed to step in about that. So here are the books, and make sure you go to jennknox.com. So that's awesome. So thank you so much. And those that are tuned in on the Facebook streaming side of this, if you want to use the link and join us for the open mic, don't worry about coming in late. You viewed the program, that's awesome. And tune in next week, and I will post in group who the guest will be. So thank you. And Jen, thank you so much.